Boom shakalaka. Game number 5. TL versus TSM. TL on a good spree recently. They've come back from 2. They're threatening the reverse sweep. They definitely had like a mental booster in game number 5 from how straightforward a victory it was, and the fact that they kind of took a hard to execute early mid-game comp and then just blew up TSM means momentum with some younger players on the TSM side is probably going to be important. Let's get in there. Bring back Freak. Yeah, that's what we want. More Freak. Chat loves Freak as well. But we get into game number 5. Team Liquid chooses red. Important to remember, because Team Liquid has chosen blue in games 1 and 3. And they have side selection game 1, 3, and 5. So, they're on red side, baby. So they're tanking a GP ban, which I'm sure Team Liquid feel pretty good about, even though they probably would have just gone for the early situation there. Let's see if the texture of the draft changes that much. Alright, so we're back to Galio. We skipped Galio in the previous game. There's no Varus Tahm Kench involved, but Tahm Kench, Braum Varus does a pretty good impersonation of the two. Problem is that Braum doesn't do as well against Galio as Morgana. So Morgana will be the strongest laning support here. Braum Varus is the, alright, let's just keep them at a like arm's length version of that duo. But they're just going to take Braum as a core JJ pick. And then a whole AD carry. Okay, so the Varus priority goes down now that Tahm Kench is gone. Important note for teams playing TL in the future. And XSmithy just taking Skarner straight up. Now, Skarner doesn't have only godlike matchups. Like, there are definitely Skarner matchups that are not great. Sejuani, for example, really good against Skarner. That's definitely an old matchup, an oldie but a goodie. Super safe choice coming through. And TSM are just taking ultra safe lanes and kind of waiting for Team Liquid to choose a solo laner, then looking to counter. I would really like a solo laner first round, either mid or top, and then start banning for that lane. Because that's how you subvert the double counter picks for TSM. You take a solo laner now who you can ban matchups against, and then you can hold final pick for impact if you need something safe, or you take the cannon if it's open and ban Aurelia in this round of the draft. It seems like they're going to be willing to tank Aurelia, though, because if you see a Jarvan ban, it's probably Jarvan and Rek'Sai. I guess you don't ban Rek'Sai because you have Skarner. So do you ban Aurelia here? Aurelia is probably the smart ban, because I think it beats most of Impact's champion pool. Good ban. Ban the Aurelia, you've got the Skarner matchup. I like it. And then, now banning STL, like, I don't think you care if Impact plays Kennen, but Impact's probably going to play Kennen. So, like, hard to say what you do with this final ban. They decide to ban it because it opens up some of the other carries that aren't as viable. What do you pick here? Like, surely it's Varus, right? Kai'Sa's fine. Yeah, they got the hard crowd control, as Azale is about to say. The reason why Kai'Sa's good with LeBlanc and 1-3-1 possibilities that Kai'Sa, as we know, can swoop in and gank the lanes that have CC with the killer instinct. So this is the sort of... Kai'Sa's scary here, mostly for Zoe. And you might say, why? It's because Zoe already doesn't want a side lane, and then the threat of Kai'Sa swooping in when LeBlanc is trying to like open up on Zoe in a side lane is really scary for Bjergsen if it ever gets to the 1-3-1 point where he's in a side lane. So actually the person who quivers the most with the Kai'Sa lock-in is usually the person who is most reluctant to side lane, and in this case it's the Zoe. Blind Akali beats most of the range of what Impact plays, and now there's no Kennen to try to survive through it. The Rek'Sai again, but like, what else, right? Like Hecarim. What would I pick? What's the god tier pick here? I think the best pick here is Sejuani. I like Sej into Skarner a lot. You can also go Zach, but I mean, your lanes are strong, so I feel like this is pretty safe to go Zach. Olaf, I think a lot of people would choose. I think with the lanes, I think Olaf's fine too. Like it's a bit uninspiring to see Rek'Sai again, but Rek'Sai can also just get that first gank off and then have an early warrior and blow people up. So I'm not inspired by it, but it happens. Now, I think this is where, like, the champion who's strongest here 5v5 wise is Ornn, because Ornn has insane synergy with Skarner, Braum, Kai'Sa. Like, it's really, really strong. I think Nautilus is kind of what you'd probably see in this spot at MSI. I think you'll see Nautilus here. Hey, Vladimir. All right. Impact Vlad ends up being the call. So it all comes down to this in a best of one, the Vlad they couldn't comp around. And we get an answer to our question, which is, you know, a lot of this series for us is to answer the 7 questions we have about TL going forward. In case you're joining us late, I'll put them back on the screen for a moment. And how does Team Liquid draft play utilize Impact as a resource is one of the key questions to answer in this particular series. And they're putting him back on a champion they couldn't use as a resource the first time these two teams played, or most recent time in the last day at match day. We've already kind of given the pass marks on question number 2. Our Team Liquid a one-dimensional team. I think we're working towards disproving some of that, but they definitely do have bot lane focus most of the time. When TL play from behind, how will they stabilize? It's getting better this series. Jensen we're still question mark on, and their adaptation and pick ban has been pretty good here. So let's close this down and look at the drafts, all things considered. I think Vladimir can weather the storm against Akali pretty decently, can farm it out. Akali doesn't get grievous wounds early in the game, but does have some burst options against the Vladimir. The Rek'Sai and Zoe is definitely a winning 2v2 against LeBlanc Skarner for a lot of the game, but post 6, you know, some tricky things can happen. And, you know, overall it's Ezreal versus Skarner, so it's a lot of ability to disengage the Skarner and open up space here on the Ezreal. Very, very safe, and it's another different 2v2 tried by TSM. Best of one, baby. Hype. A game 5 for Jensen. Not on Echo this time. Fair question, Azale, and definitely much more of a question for TSM than TL because of their younger members. Just the fact that Smoothie was spamming taunt actually gives me some faith in his mental that he's not so tunnel vision on the pressure, of course, is going to be a word tossed around a lot when talking about this series. Team Liquid poised to win 3 straight, not just games, but LCS titles. Zoe versus LeBlanc skill matchup. It started from being really like it went from being a LeBlanc counter pick to Zoe's winning the matchup more often than not to LeBlanc's doing well again. So it's definitely an evolving one. It feels like we're like StarCraft 1 or something, and somehow like these units are just being used in different ways or microed in different ways to change like kind of pretty cut and dry things. I again tend to believe that the Zoe favored if you play perfectly. Just because the trouble bubble at the right time negates so much of the damage, and your return damage against a squishy LeBlanc is obviously going to be high. Cadian's pathing. Full clear bot side into top scuttle. I wonder why. Same pathing from McSmithy. I assume he got the communication. I feel like between games, this could have changed the pathing here to find a way to punish xMsmithy. Because xMsmithy's trying to make the same play, but this time, you know, Braum Kai'Sa, a lot less reliable getting level 2 advantage. Ezreal is a better champion at level 1 than most. I guess Kai'Sa maybe trims waves even better than just stacking up the Rising Spellforce passive from Ezreal. But he went for the same clear of red buff into bot scuttle to guarantee a scuttle, and it worked. So there was time for TSM to adapt that between games. Not a melee champion. Like, can't do as much return damage. Like, basically every 25 seconds or so when the, you know, conceal ability's there on the W from Broken Blade, the Shroud, like, Vlad ends up taking a bad trade, but otherwise he's trading pretty well against the Akali. It's moments like this, though, that suck. When the Shroud, like, perfectly lines up to give lane control, like, Impact can only do so much. Another deep control ward from xMsmithy. We'll call it Maverick number 2. Put down. You'll notice that he doesn't have the same identity as when he had to ward for the Zillion in the previous game, because no summoners are used by Jensen. So he's much more competitive in the mid lane, doesn't need the coverage of the Skarner as much. Should TSM ban Skarner after game 3 and 4? I don't know what ban it replaces. And it says the wrong thing if they literally don't have any pick except Rek'Sai into it. But, I mean, there's an argument for it. I don't think so, but I don't think Skarner's winning. I think xMsmithy is just pathing. I think he could play Gragas the same as he's playing Skarner and be fine. But, yeah, hard to fully interpret that answer. If you just farm this out, I probably prefer TL, because I think that Vladimir scales harder than anyone in this game. But it wouldn't be by that much. I think that TL has more flexible side lane options, and Vladimir does a good job on the late game. Even Ezreal can't peel himself away from Vladimir. So I think TSM maybe has slight onus. And TSM Siege at 2-item Ezreal, 1-item Zoe is really strong. So I think TSM's big modus operandum is getting Zoe and Ezreal into the same lane and taking down structures. I think that's where their comp is bread and butter. They can do a lot of things in team fights, but I think Akali is a situational team fighter. Zoe, there's Braum in the front line, and Skarner's tanky enough, so there's enough of a front line that Zoe's not just deleting squishies. So the earlier TSM can rotate their bot lane mid, on one hand is good, or if they can just full-on 4-man siege with their bot lane, that's also pretty good, because the only counterpoint is that Zoe doesn't really want to be side lane against LeBlanc. Oh, nicely done by Broken Blade. So opens with ult, and I think a lot of people would assume he's going in defensively. Impact just dies. Nice played. When was W used? W's probably available by Impact. He just gets surprised by the aggression. Nicely done. Arcadian was pathing up, so he's fine to go all in because he has Arcadian to counter gank if Skarner goes too aggressive. Well played. Mistake from Impact. He should just W out for safety reasons. There's no reason not to. And that's he's already pretty low health, so it's not like the health cost matters. We'll play by Broken Blade. Got the early Ocean Drake, got the, I guess 1v2 solo kill top side. That's a big lead, TSM. It's exactly what you want. It's more and more likely to get your ducks in a row, and Ezreal and Zoe are throwing down skill shots, and LeBlanc trying to stop a siege, not great. Vladimir trying to stop a siege, not great. Kai'Sa not fantastic there either until Q evolve. Well played. Like, why not W early? It's just not... I mean, it's because he wants to hold it to turn all in if Skarner chases down Akali when she goes defensively, but what if Broken Blade goes aggressively? Then you have no answer. Ooh. Wasn't really aiming towards the Gromp that much. Okay, Sven, calm down. Calm down. The win lane win game strategy that kind of ended up being TL strategy in game number 4 is sort of on the ball here. See what Smithy does, because Smithy again is kind of in a bit of a dog position. He's not going to have something fall in his lap like it did in game number 4. So he has to find a way to impact this game. I guess Jensen's gone full offense in the build. Like, you know, he's got the AP parts of his Ludens, so that's probably the lane that's most susceptible to being ganked, but Bjergsen's holding onto a heal, so not really going to find very much. Right now, Akali has control of top lane, and mid lane, the Zoe is winning, so they kind of have to give up free objectives here. This is huge control to TSM. Feels like every objective is theirs. Double control ward top side, very nice vision there. The only vision Skarner has is bottom side for the second spawn cloud, which already is not that inspiring. Are we just jamming it now? Yeah, just jamming the... This is the get the gunblade fast. Man, look at this. The gunblade's already there, so they're not even getting a snowball gunblade. This is like getting Akali to a snowball Morellan Armacon, and then you just kill impact on sight. It's pretty insanely aggressive. Yeah, Jensen puts down a normal ward and actually just goes up with his jungler, because his jungler is reliable, right? It's got its suppression. I guess the only question here is, why would Rek'Sai not just put down the Rift Herald in the lane? He wanted to put down an aggressive control ward. So his job, he wants to put down a control ward in the brush behind the turret and jam the Rift Herald. Around that, he has nothing. Sven has no TP, and obviously he's not realistically going to TP top. Bjergsen's only getting back to lane. They already have 4 control wards in the river. Do you really need to put down that ward? Definitely not worth it, I would say, for Arcadian. He really wants this ward. Like, he loves this ward. He doesn't have the mid priority to do it this time. Broken Blade is so farmed and fed, as you can tell. The answer is yes to the can he 1v2 question. Damn. This Akali is monstrously far ahead. Like, you go Sork's QSS as well. Like, soon. Wait, that's not Broken Blade. Hey. This is why people were saying Sven lol about game number 5. Because they got the picture wrong. I get it now. You guys are funny. I got it. I got it now. 1,000 gold difference. Chat, this is black humor, by the way. Like, I do know that Sven makes a mistake, and because people are still flaming him all this time after, I still don't know what his mistake is. I am very well aware that it's not the portrait in the bottom left, just to be clear. Like, we wouldn't be quoting the Riot miss picture 1 week afterward with this Ven lol. All I know is that Broken Blade is like so far ahead in the 1v1 that like lane matchups don't matter. Like, he's dominantly far ahead. Flying around the screen, very nice. So TL can't go top. This is the right time to abandon the Vladimir lane, right? Like, you have to go bot lane and try to find objectives. Let's see how they built the bot lane situation. Skarner went bot after Cloud Drake was dead. So let's go back to what happened this game. They took down the Cloud Drake. I want to see what you do knowing the top lane is like AFK. Like, there's nothing you can do about top. Like, you got to give up top. Just like when your top lane Teemo dies 3 times against Darius, you don't go top lane, you try to make something happen elsewhere. So they lost the objective bot side, but you have to make a negative tempo play, i.e. you need to make a play against the run of the game. Otherwise, you're just losing everywhere, or you're just doing nothing. Like, just farming the jungle is not viable here. So Skarner needs the Kai'Sa bomb to come up just to clear a control ward, but that's where the game's at, right? You kind of have to give up where you're at. And then we get the slow push to the bot side. Skarner sticks around. You know Rek'Sai's jungling top side. This is a good play from Smithy. Like, it's sort of thankless stuff, but you need to find something somewhere. Otherwise, you're losing everywhere. QSS boots done on Akali. Now she can overextend to Heart's Content. I mean, Akali does a lot of things. Doing turret damage against a Vlad is hard. Like, it's hard for her to take an inner turret or something like that. She's not Jace when it comes to growing a lead. Her teleport's not up, but she's going to have a pretty decent teleport with how strong she is. They have double QSS. And they have gold parity going double QSS. So that lets you know that TSM are in a really good spot. But a lot of their lead is only present when Akali's on the screen. Remember that. Good check coming through from Bjergsen. So how did they know that they were there? What information did they have? So Kai'Sa leaves bot lane, doesn't take the minion wave when it's pushed out in the bot side, so it has to be bottom side somewhere. It wasn't a realistic back timing because Kai'Sa just backed, so you need to check your brushes, and Bjergsen has the easiest ability to check this one. So well thought out by TSM. No boneheaded face checks. Well done. I don't think the Skarner Spires revealed them. It might have. I could be wrong on that. I'm always like a bit fuzzy on the exact corner of the vision there, but I don't believe that to be true. You could be wrong. You could be right, sorry. Double if use cleanse, question mark. Yeah, use cleanse to Captain Jack the Drowsy. No stun is gonna arm there. QSS coming on Sven. He's going Trinity Force this game. It's probably fine. QSS frustrates Skarner. Sorry, the slow from Iceborne Gauntlet frustrates Skarner, but you're against double AP, so I don't mind Trinity Force in this scenario. So TSM have, you know, an open top lane where they can push into the inner turret at any moment. That gives them a lot of Drake control because they're under so much pressure topside. And Rek'Sai can like steal red and then look for a turret dive and take an inner turret. But they don't have bot lane outer turret just yet, which is kind of frustrating for them. You know, they lost the turret, as we know. I think this is the moment where Galio and Rek'Sai should be invading blue side jungle to both cement Drake control, but get this turret down and threaten Akali teleport, because Akali's teleport's up and available again. Akali wants to transfer a lead, and she's going to do it more honestly by just roaming down. Cool, JJ catching the True Shot Barrage again. It's like the second or third time this game. Very nice. So TL's comp at this point in the game, because the Vlad is unlikely to be a fight winner, like really wants to burst down one person during tether. Whereas TSM, like they can zone a lot of space with Akali if she gets the right flank. Now remember, at this point, when we don't see Akali on the screen, the game is way more even than you might think based on the early parts of the game, because so much of the gold is in Akali's pocket. What happens if Broken Blade start this? Broken Blade can't contest the vision. He doesn't have any team with him. He has a lot of tools. That's why he walks up as far as he is. It's a bit of a solo mistake, but it's not a huge one, right? It will lose them Ocean Drake, and again, you don't want to fight here because you don't have Akali with you, but I mean, they're going to try. They got 1 for 0 anyway. Yeah, one for Ocean Drake. The Team Liquid, the Ocean Drake for Liquid to me does nothing. It's nice to interrupt the Elder scaling, but I think, you know, Ocean Drake at 20 minutes is pretty meaningless. TSM are pretty desperate to fight this, even though with the teleport, they're getting an Akali to come in with no ult. Like, she still does some stuff, but it seems like a pretty huge investment here from TSM. I would have preferred holding the TP for a better time, because they still don't have the bloody outer turret bot lane, and they can't even threaten a TP gank on it. Like, with how strong Akali was, them not having 3 outer turrets at 21 minutes, now starting to probably piss them off quite a lot. Frustrating. Jensen's roamed down to the mid lane. You know, Skarner picks up the minion wave in mid. They already lost the turret there. Kai'Sa can also back off, and like TSM haven't shown that there's an objective for them to walk up to next. Now a lot of the easy objectives are down, but they're showing very immature kind of strategies to take this bot lane out of turret, which they actually really do want. Like, you return to bot lane out of turret all the time because Drake's there, but they still haven't really shown a team plan to take this bot lane out of turret. And Infernal spawning in 2 minutes, and they still have a turret disadvantage when their early game gold lead is pretty huge. They run up to Baron, but I don't think you're that worried about TSM's Baron. Their Baron damage is pretty average. Like, no Blade of the Ruin King Ezreal is okay. There's always about the peel off. Akali isn't going to be grouped with them as 5, so her damage is not relevant. Like, they don't actually have a lot of Baron threat, and they still have. They're much more likely to get frisky around the Infernal Drakes. So it feels like a lot of the early game advantage, like where it should have been a game where you had this issue where, for example, Akali was a solo kill potential onto Vlad, or would roam around with the Rek'Sai and kill people, gank squad. Instead, Akali's kind of been just farming and pushing minions into Vlad for 5-6 minutes, and isn't being wielded as much of a weapon. Was used to counter teleport over a Ocean Drake they lost. So they're They're not growing a lead here when surely they should be. Sven shooting Qs in. That's cute. The lull state is real, guys. But when Akali is that strong, the lull state, like, it's so easy to grow a lead with Akali Rek'Sai. Like, just kill people. There was never a TP attempt on bot lane. Just give it up here. There's ways you can fight for that, but they just don't feel confident to do so, and they just want to get gold on the Vladimir, which I probably don't make that call, but I can respect it. They're saying that there's good times rolling later. And, like, Vlad is kind of an Infernal Drake in and of itself, just because of how strong he is late game. So, if your read is that 8% more doesn't change if we win late game or not, don't take the 25-minute fight with, like, a desperate TP. So, that's probably fine. They lose the bot lane out turret finally. Goodbye, bot lane out turret. But now it's like, how do they get more? Because now Vlad has 2 items. Like, he's not going to get solo killed by Akali with anywhere near the same ease. Now it's red side team defending Baron, and that's what red side's good at. They don't have someone who can do sad Gragas bowling. You know, they don't have, like, Skarner can't really check the Baron pit very easily. He needs control wards. So now as TSM, you want to exhaust their vision, hit a trouble bubble on someone behind the pit, and then take the Baron. That's what you have to do. TSM need the Baron. The Baron is insanely high value. Zoe, Ezreal plus Baron, and the game just ends, basically. So let's watch TSM's attempt to get Baron and how TL reset around the Baron. Because they've got Quadra QSS, so they can face check things and put down aggressive wards. They're not under much threat. They got Quadra QSS. Pushing out mid. You see how much more proactive they can be with the outer bot lane turret down. Like, it's suddenly a lot less toothless. Jensen's slippery, but they do get him eventually. That was really messy, but there's no big kills out of it, all things considered. We'll watch it here. I mean, Broken Blade is really powerful. He's level 16. He's got a huge amount of items. Does that summon a heal? Yeah, summon a heal comes through from the Zoe just to keep it fighting. Broken Blade plays as well. Nice play from both. And the impact is for sure on anemic Vlad. Like, I'm not like suddenly like, okay, now when I'm casting Team Liquid in the future, I talk about his Vladimir. Like, obviously at this point, like, he hasn't had a great game, but he's lost the minimum after the Akali was Gunblade at 12 minutes. Like, Gunblade Akali at 12 minutes should mean an open side of the map. Instead, it took 16 minutes for them to get really anything meaningful out of how strong the Akali is. And that's, I think, some good defensive play from Impact, but also TSM missing some opportunities to, like, grow a proper gold lead. Because we're kind of an even gold game if you think about the 5,000 gold dumped into QSS on the side of TSM. You're certainly not getting that much battle stats out of that. So TL kind of got a breather in this game. Like, I don't think IG or G2 give them the breather that TSM give them here. But we're going to fight over a second Infernal. For the first time, TL's actually grouped and willing to fight for something. Alright, so wow, they routed them. 5 for 3. TSM smashed them. So they choose to fight here. Let's talk about this. So TL finally get positioning on a Drake. Vlad's level 16. They say, okay, we're going to fight. Let's look at the gold lead here. The gold is, 3,500, mostly in QSSs. So let's watch how this plays out. This feels like it should be the game-winning fight, right? Bubble pops the Banshee Veil. All right, Azel, you don't need to speak that slow. We get it. We're trying to learn. Really nice sidestep. Caught it. I guess he misses the True Shot Barrage. So Broken Blade is really tricky here. He R's through the Braum, gets knocked up anyway. In the middle of the fight, watching Impact, he gets Hemoplague on who? On Rek'Sai and Ezreal, not ideal. They get very little value out of the Hemoplague. Let's watch the middle of the fight. Is that a Paddle Star? Let's watch it again. You see how many tools are needed to try to do any damage onto Vlad. This Paddle Star is the big one, right? Oh, Paddle Star takes off more than half Core JJ's health, and then it's actually the true damage amp plus the Wombo. That's really nice onto the front line. Like, they lose front line instantly. The front line instantly dies. Impact gets basically no AoE damage off, and Double Lift has the 80 carry with no frontline problem going on. Really nicely played by TSM. Galio ult was huge there. Smoothie, like, bossed how much he was able to zone. Because Double Lift's, like, in the pit trying to find a time to use Killer Instinct the moment Broken Blade opens up. So if you watch Double Lift here, he's aggroing the Infernal. But it feels like there's a scattered call here from TL. This is not a fantastic team fight by any means. It feels like Double Lift's identity here and the rest of the team. The moment that Akali, like, rushed them, they didn't have too much of an idea of how to play it out. So TSM makes a clear call. TL makes a split call. Double Infernal. Chat's obviously memeing about this being the game ender. Like, we all know TL win this, but feels like a game won by TSM, right? So they don't get Baron. Now, Baron wins in the game. Double Infernal obviously feels good, but they don't have Baron. Getting basically the maximum without Baron, so that feels good.
Closing in on the final episode of TSM's redemption arc. After last year, what a huge recovery for this team. Growing so much even just over this spring split. Standout performances from a lot of their newest members.
TL's going to find it hard to even patrol their red side jungle. Ideally, TSM just want regular wards in the red side jungle and then just catch someone with Zoe and kill them. Zoe's huge. And they can't break the base without Baron, but the game kind of ends if TSM get Baron. Jensen being a live control ward at the moment. Trying to be a one-man pressure valve. He's standing up here. Oh, he fails his distort. That's funny. Oopsies. Just watching the Baron. So TSM get the push out. Still very shallow vision for TSM. They would like to get a little bit more aggressive vision. With this many QSSs and Vlad under turret, surely you can push up some vision. Hex Drinker Merc Scimitar, baby. Sven is very tanky. It's so scared to check even vision against this team. He just about gets the Spire. What?
Will push people down. The question is, can they find those margins? Can they find that opening? So far, TSM has outmaneuvered. Sven, no quick silver sash. He is down. He is shut down. What is he doing? The Baron. Sven walks right. Sash has up the question. Kais inch.
So how does this happen? So Sven's up top, and LeBlanc's just, you know, kind of playing with vision, just trying to poke around, failing distorts. They got full vision control top side. And Sven goes straight up, and he's tanky, right? He's got Merc Scimitar Hex Drinker, so he's not worried about any one person. They got no deep vision at any point, so they don't know where anybody from TL is. They don't have really any information about back timers or anything like that. But he knows the river is clear. Now he knows Skarner is around and Braum is around. So your Arcane Shift's over. Going for a merry walk. So far, fine. Predator's up, so like, you know. But he's got QSS, so he's like, whatever. No idea where Kai'Sa is, but might just forget the Killer Instinct's ability. That could happen. Gets slowed. So if you forget Kai'Sa's on the enemy team, are you fine here? Does he die if Kai'Sa is not a champion? I mean, he probably still dies to LeBlanc. So why is Galio going mid and Ezreal going alone to the Baron with no objective there? What is Galio during this? Galio is showing a lot of respect. But Ezreal is showing zero respect. Like, what are we doing? What is the objective that we are fighting for here? Did he die trying to get the fucking Spire? Control? Why? Rek'Sai's bot lane. What are we doing? Like Zoe's on a back time. Like, it's fine to like poke from 1,000 range and be like, please don't start the Baron. What? Because it's one of those things where you're like, what does he know and what does he not know? And like, you can forget about Kai'Sa ultimate and think that LeBlanc's on a back. And if you really need to fight for something, like, okay, he was fighting for something, but what is he fighting for? I feel like he's not thinking about the enemies and he's also not fighting for anything. That's a problem. Like, at this point, you're like, okay, my Rek'Sai's bot, Akali is pushing, Zoe's in base. I don't want them to start Baron. But why? Kind of looks like an eagle sitting on a nest, doesn't it? What do you guys see? What do you guys see in this Sonya's pose? An eagle in a nest? Some of these Zonia's poses are very interesting to think about. A maple leaf? Yeah, okay. I can see the maple leaf. I see a beautiful butterfly. See, I feel better now. Now I can also see a beautiful butterfly. I can smile and enjoy the butterfly. It's very beautiful. A leaf with 2 sonic rings. Sure. Okay. Like an autumn night. I can like it. I'm enjoying it. Looks like a golden ward. I don't know. There's not really a ward that's that fat. It's a pretty thick ward. Vlad is Canadian confirmed. Could be, man. I see Sven's hope and dreams. I mean, it's over the TSM cam, so that's probably good. Thank you for censoring whatever's happening over there. Let's get back to the game. If you guys are wondering, this is the sort of Baron that we were discussing. Like, we talked about how TL didn't take a Baron. They probably should have in game number 2 and lost. And then, like, 50-50 Barons are not categorically wrong, but TL has such an insanely huge momentum change here. Like, the Akali raid boss is downplayed because she's not there. Sven literally just entered to the enemy team. Like, you have to finish this Baron, even though it ends up being a 50-50. The one thing I always want to explain is, if you don't take a 50-50 when you're behind, there may never be a 50-50. You might be making a 10-90 to try to get back in the game. And, you know, you take your 50-50 when you can get it. They take a 50-50 and get it. Like, that's, you know, well played by TL. You have to go for that Baron there, because you never are going to get a better chance to get that Baron outside of just like a, you know, team fight on neutral ground that TSM will never give you. That's definitely the right Baron to go for here. They do their best to zone it off. Let's see if he gets in the pit. Gets in the pit. Yeah. Gets in the pit, early smites, and it's counter smite, so it's fine. And now you kind of have the original analysis problem that... So the Baron shuts down the siege and it gives you lane pressure where you didn't have before. Elder's spawning at the same time. And Akali's team fighting, it's actually very hard for her to shut down anyone on the enemy team, because Kai'Sa flies away, LeBlanc flies away, and Vlad pulls. So Akali has it pretty hard in transferring her lead to the game team fights. Like, it can happen, but it's hard to do reliably. They're just going to run at Baron and say, well, we've got these nice buffs. What are you going to do? Minion wave's a lot more even. I like what Double Lift's doing. He's pushing up one more minion wave and knows he can always kill her instinct back in. They don't really have hard engage, though. That's kind of the awkward thing, is that if Vlad keeps Akali away, the remaining engage is like Taunt Flash or like a Trouble Bubble hitting. Nicely done by Jensen here. Why I say that good old LeBlanc's late game is good is that he pops over and, you know, very hard to negate that damage. It's a huge amount of burst. And watch this cooldown on Jensen. It's like almost no cooldown. Happy times. So Arcadian's out of the fight. They don't have a smite. He has to smite minions. Holy crap! A lot of stuff happened with no one dying! So Arcadian's like out of the fight from Mimic Distortion. That's going to be up in like 8 seconds. So ult onto Sven. What happens here?
He could be the target again. He could be the target again. Can they find it? They pull it
So
forward. Sven.
so he gets R and then gets the auto attack after the QSS goes down, I assume. 'Cause he's stunned, right? Yeah, that must be the stun from the fracture. You don't often see that in that order, but it did happen. Does Ven die? No, he doesn't. Okay, that's just the entire more worth of health. Alright, so we understand that interaction. Jensen just gets Mimic Distortion back up, but good stasis. Wait. I need to watch this again. Jensen kites up. Well played. Cool JJ. Unbreakable able to actually just negate all of the damage. So what does this all mean? Ezreal didn't have to back, but has TP if he needs to. Akali has no flank ward, which is a bit awkward. Although on the right's decent, but not ideal. Kai'Sa really strong at doing neutrals. Do you all in on this objective? It's important to note that there are no minions to justify the full all in onto the Elder. You also have not blown Kai'Sa's ult, and there's no ults available. So TSM don't have to make this about fighting for Elder now. I think they want to disengage, right? I don't think you wanted to start the Elder here. Usually you want to do this Elder dance when you have like an inhibitor down in mid and you're pushing in waves and stuff that you could rotate to, but this is actually just no side waves exist, let's fight. But it's also many, many hours into a best of 5, so you can understand how sometimes it's super aggressive. Cooldowns up for everybody except Galio and Braum. Wait, what? So TSM here have a pretty decent spot. It's 3v4. CoreJJ's separated, but he could be able to join in pretty fast. Really? So my issue here is, what are we trying to do? Is unfortunately the question I ask a second time. Because like it's Bjergsen Arcadian's Van, you know only Smithy is dead, so there's no enemy smite there. You can't really burn the Elder because Arcadian's already low, and like there's 4 members who could randomly just re-engage, try to blow him up. So that's kind of a problem. Bjergsen and Arcadian kite up, and Sven suicides on the bot side. Like at this point, if you just regroup top side, you full reset the Elder, and you fight with Bjergsen if he hits a trouble bubble over the wall. But Bjergsen's almost out of mana, and Arcadian's out of a health bar. Man, you really would love to call a tactical pause at some time. after these two plays, right? What a tragedy. Well, that was a rubbish turn. It's a solo turn from Sven. I assume trying to make a big play to make up for his earlier fail, but there's no validity to it. There's no objective to take off of it. It's without vision. The LeBlanc kited that way. Like, this is just having your worst game in a game 5, you know? Like, Broken Blade's trying, bless his heart, but obviously Akali can be turned on by multiple people. What's happening at the start of this fight? Let's watch the early parts of the fight and see what Sven does. So Sven is mostly putting damage. You know, he's not getting many big connections. He flashes defensively. One Q, misses the next Q. Just about kills Impact. Like, Sven hasn't really done anything this fight, but his poke hurts when he gets it. It just feels like this is one of those times where you miss a few Qs and you kind of all in too aggressively, and then it just goes totally the other way. Holy shit, this is the reaction gif right here. This is an amazing reaction gif. Has someone made this yet? Oh, it's beautiful. What a great reaction gif. Yes! What a load of complicated emotions here. Let's watch person by person. There's Zix, who's like into it. Yeah, he tries to play it off. Lust Boy. He can't seem to see him very well. I don't know why. That's Grig in the middle, right? That's great. Parth. Very stoic. Man. It's a struggle. Like, he does 4,700 damage, right? It doesn't feel like it, though. But it just, the lust for that last piece of damage did too much. See, now TL has a gold lead in Vladimir. And they can force face checks the moment the Scuttle vision goes down there. I guess it's control wards. The vision here is pretty good from TSM top side. Damn. Getting feisty. Core JJ gets the shield up. Very nice. Alright, now hitting the Baron here is pretty good. So, onto it. Galio just popped at the start. No frontline with Galio dead. It's a very squishy lineup from TSM. When does CodeJJ see this? I guess it's the visual cue. The audio cue, sorry. Galio pops, man. That, like, tether there did insane damage. And it's just a quick turn. There's no intricacies to that one. Game 5 is so harsh on mental. Smoothie's such a lovely kid as well.
defense left. Championship on the line. A minute and a half left on the Baron buff. Inhibitors are under attack. All three are open and broken. Blade push out.
Jensen is just enormous in this point of the game. No one can contest. Jensen's LeBlanc. He is hungry for his first title.
Playing out 3 lanes. Nicely done. Baron buff negates Akali, Zoe.
Here comes Galley with well. Not that Carry like he didn't get
Coming in. This is going to be TSM's final fight.
Alright, Broken Blade.
carry like he
Deep teleport.
tries to find double it. Here comes Galley as well. A knockup only onto the tank though. Acadia QSS South. Broken Blade at half HP. There's a big top, but double lift is safe. He's still surviving.
Yeah, you can just play front to back as TL. That's what the comp does. Damn. Oh, it's one you don't forget for a while, that's for sure.
What a series. The Team Liquid veterans.
Yeah, that's a really hard one to kind of... Like, it's a game 5, and obviously it's one that TSM should win pretty easily. I prefer to look at it and think about how much TSM should have done with how big the Akali was. Like, they got frustrated out of kind of a 10-minute golden phase where they could have really pushed for more. And then couldn't actually convert that into much. And like the turning point in the game is obviously like a shocking error by Sven, right? Like, if only the second play happens compared to the first, like, no one remembers this as the Sven kind of fail. But because Sven has the like indescribably bad play around the Spire, and then you know, compounds it with the Arcane Shift in. Like, I don't think the second Arcane Shift happens without the first misplay. So I mean, that's like that was kind of the watershed moment for him, and then from there the game falls down. And it's so easy to remember this game is like, if Sven didn't make that mistake, they would win. But I would argue that if they played the macro with how strong Akali was with a 12-minute Gunblade, and then like a 20-minute Gunblade QSS plus X, like, I feel like they could have gotten bigger leads, taken bot lane out of turret earlier, and kind of taken over the map in a cleaner way. So I think that TSM's macro play let them down a little bit in this series. And I kind of came into LCS playoffs heavily expecting TSM to be the best team, because I thought TL was kind of playing standard macro but looking uninspired for like quite a lot of the last few weeks. And then TSM was playing early game proactive style really well, and I thought they were, in general, growing their leads well. Like, they're not a perfect team at closing out games. You know, the first game I reviewed was TSM C9, where with the Zoe Varus, I think, they couldn't close, and they didn't have the greatest lane assignments, but they were getting better and better. Their series against C9, like, that was obviously a really close series. They clutched out over the course of it. I came away feeling like C9 could have won that series, and the TSM, like, you know, that was like a 52-48 series. But then, you know, Team Liquid just like smashed FlyQuest, and I didn't really know what it meant. But in the final, like, people are saying the argument, you know, I think TSM played overall the best on the day. And I think you could definitely say that from some angles, but I actually think Team Liquid played better macro game overall. Like, I think, like, you know, TSM should have won game 5, but that doesn't mean that Team Liquid played worse over the course of 5 games. Like, I think the macro issues they had in getting a big enough lead from how big the Akali was in game number 5, like, those are conspicuous. And I think in general, Team Liquid, like, they lost game 1 and TSM outplayed them and used their counter picks really well. And that's where you're like, okay, TSM, like, Broken Blade's going to be your champion today. And they Sonataric them, and I think Team Liquid didn't really know how to react to that. And I think the plan they chose was one that was almost guaranteed to fail with the Ashe Syra. Like, it was cool to see Ashe Syra, but I didn't think it was going to be able to do too much. But I love the way that Team Liquid, you know, pushed up the GP priority in game number 3 and didn't make it about last pick for Broken Blade. that was good. And then in game number 4, they chose a pretty tricky draft to execute, but, played really assertive and fast against a team that, had just lost their first game on stage and, waltzed through. And then game 5 was, it was the game 5 where there's a lot to cheer about, but definitely like the turning point is like a solo mistake for no reason. So it's kind of hard to argue that, who's your player of the series? Like, obviously Broken Blade was the player of the series in this series. Like, he was great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that TSM played better than Team Liquid over the games. I think in general, Team Liquid's like standard. This is all just my opinion, right? Like, I think his standard was like Team Liquid was a better team, but it's a long series. I think Team Liquid showed some things, and let's look over the document we made to kind of like put our thoughts in, because again, most of our takeaways are more interesting about Team Liquid than TSM. Like, I think TSM grew over the season, and by the end, were identifiably way better than the start. And Broken Blade is like the new pariah, right? You're feeling so good about Broken Blade as a player, and how much development he's shown. But right now, we need to zoom in on Team Liquid, and these are the 7 questions. The first 2 I came up with. The next 5 were chat coming through. Onto like, what can we understand about Team Liquid going into MSI? Because that's the most interesting thing to take away from this series, right? How does Team Liquid draft play utilize Impact as a resource? I think it works best when Team Liquid picks a champion that loses gracefully, or Kennen. I think Kennen is his best skill champion. Couldn't evaluate Jace based on this series, but I thought he played Jace pretty well. Like, it seems like he's pretty much Sword, right? Again, in that he can play Jace and get lane priority and be pretty smart about avoiding ganks where possible. He can play Kennen, and I think he actually had some great individual moves, but you can't deny that the gangplank, losing gracefully, playing around bot side, that was Team Liquid's best look, was taking GP and making plays elsewhere. So I think Kennen, Gnar, Ornn, like Nautilus, like, I think he'll be on these sort of picks. And that he's got a singed around the corner somewhere. Can you zoom in? I can make the text larger. I'll do that. Sorry, I had it at 150. There's 200. But, you don't come through, like, you see him fail the pool on the Akali solo kill in the 1v2, and you're like, that's not a good look against the Shy and things like that. So I think it's right to come in with some trepidation about Impact. And you worry that if he takes the first pick Jace, then the Shy plays Ornn and beats him, and you're like, how did that happen? Like, I think that'll be a problem for them, but I think first round top lane double ban is what they want to do. I think they probably want blue side to get the best available jungler, take a strong 2v2, and then, jam some bans into top lane where possible. So I don't think Impact comes away. I thought he came away enhanced against FlyQuest. I thought Impact was good in that series. I think Impact was graceful in this series in his losses, like, as I would expect from him as a player. But there's just no scope for him to suddenly start solo killing people in skill matchups, right? That's not going to happen. But I think they, over the course of this series, worked out the GP pick is a big one for him, and it's one that people will ban. And I think his Kennen play overall was good. So I think given those 2 things, I think that Team Liquid played to his lane a little bit, and he played well, and they didn't play to his lane. The Vladimir, I think, is one that they need to give up on, though. Like, I think the Vladimir, his laning phase is too weak to pull off Vladimir, like Nuguri and the best Vlads out there. And investing resources into him losing lane on Vlad is not what you want. How practices Team Liquid at correct back timings, vision games? I think they had a big improvement on number 2 compared to what I saw in their FlyQuest series, and also pretty consistently over the season there was those times where they would do the right thing back, but not play around the fact that vertical jungling had ended or the vision had been cleared. I think in general, Team Liquid has got a lot better at that from my estimation. That was a worry I had about the team. I didn't feel like there were too many communication issues with that. So I'm going to give them a pass on number 2. Game number 3, a Team Liquid a one-dimensional team. What are their weaknesses, and how do they weaknesses stack up against other teams at MSI? I don't necessarily think they're a one-dimensional team. I think the problem with them is that outside of a game like Game 4 where they just blow open the enemy, I think too often they pick comps that are slow. Like, they pick slow comps, and I think that's fine if your laners are really powerful and the synergy between your lanes and jungle is really powerful and your vision game is strong. I think SKT plays slow games from time to time as well. But I think Team Liquid takes slow games that they know how they end, but the route they get there is usually pretty comfortable because the region they play in is usually on the slower side, and they can wait through some of those issues. And like, Smithy needs to have a blinder for those sort of drafts to work against fast teams. So I think IG and G2 definitely, they look at Team Liquid as very beatable. And then SKT and Team Liquid have some overlaps, but SKT have shown a better propensity to play the early game, largely in the first half of the season. And also there's some lane discrepancies there that might be used against them. So I think if they can find a way to channel Game 4, like if they can come up with a new meta strategy on 9.8, kind of like C9 did at Worlds 2015, I think that could be really big with them to take some wins in a best of one. And I think they will be games where their standard gameplay pays off and they're able to close out games. But I think one-dimensional is perhaps a misnomer. I would say Team Liquid of 2018 was one-dimensional, and it was like in Double Lift We Trust. I think Team Liquid have multiple carries, especially on a good day for Jensen. But they're way better than they were last year without completely reinventing the wheel, and I think that's hard to do without quite a huge shift in their roster. Will playing through TL bot win TL games at MSI? I think the answer to that question could be yes, because I think that top lane tanks with Ornn and Nautilus very, very viable and potential for more, like a Mundo in certain matchups. I think that playing through bot lane, which is something they do pretty well, and I think CoreJJ and Smithy have a good understanding, will win them games. Now, will it win them best of fives? My read is no. But will it win them games? I would say yes. When TL fall behind, how well do they stabilize? I think a lot better than I may have expected. I think they make, because of number 2 being improved, I think in general TL were more reliably making, like, there were no boneheaded face checks from TL in this series. I think in general, after the early game, after some like laning mistakes where Akali shouldn't be solo killing Vlad and things like that, I think TL's resets and vision game and safety, I think they played safety first pretty well. So I think in general they have stabilized pretty well in this series. Jensen, I think he had a really good LeBlanc game, and he took a lot of LeBlanc bans. I think his Zilean positioning was really smart. Game 4 was a Jensen showcase about Jensen the player rather than Jensen on Zilean, because the Zilean, it was about how well he counter ganks rather than necessarily like a pick that he was like flexing on the enemy. And someone in chat next here, Jensen's okay, but rookie faker caps. I think Jensen will have more games where he's stable against those than games where he gets blown out by them. Like, this was not a rookie faker solo carry split by any means. I think Faker comes in hot because he had a really good last month of the season, but he was on Lissandra duty most of the season. I think rookie, by his standards, had a pretty quiet split, and the best of rookie will blow up Jensen, and Faker in vintage form will blow up Jensen, but I think more games than people give credit, Jensen will be fine. And Caps, I think, is a bad matchup for Jensen. Unless Jensen can get in his head, in the early part of a laning phase, like, that does feel like a bad matchup. But I don't think it's open mid lane people roll through. And it's also a new look. And, with Pobelta, there's the consistent mental issues because international events have been such a black mark on such a very strong domestic career. I think Jensen doesn't have that problem because C9 has always overachieved at Worlds based on expectation. And in general, there was like Bodied by Faker in 2016, and that hasn't happened in a long time. So I give Jensen, I think, more of the benefit of the doubt than most because he's reliably performed internationally, at least to a decent level. And if he can find those picks that, you know, if he's a rich man's TL per belter, I think that's a start. You know, like I don't think he's going to be a weakness. How was TL's adaptation of pick ban during the best of series? I think in general they were really strong with that. In game number 3, I think they then were forced to go in a different direction in game number 4, and I think they pulled that off as well. Like, I wasn't convinced with the early Zillion into, you know, no Zillion Kindred dealing with the enemy team, but they clearly had some success on that comp in practice because they were able to kind of bulldoze through the enemy. And game 5 was I guess more towards the negative side because then it went back to the Vlad, and I think like I want them to have a new pick against Blind Pick Akali for MSI. I don't think they have. The Vlad is not the answer there. But yeah, I think from there, TL in general impressed me pick ban more than I thought they would. Remember, they've only played 2 best of series, and the first one they never lost a game. So we only have a sample size of 1 of an adaptation best of series from TL. I think they slightly impressed me. I think they still have things to work on. I hope they're ahead of the meta and fast start at MSI, because if they just come in a little bit behind the meta and all the other teams, you know, if they have like some good ideas and then SKT adapts to the meta, like TL strike me as a team that will do better in the first round robin of group stage than the second. But that's all the questions we had from TL versus TSM, and that's my VOD review of TL versus TSM. 8 hours and 6 minutes, if in case you guys were wondering the running time there. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, so we'll end the VOD here and come back and answer a couple of questions and then go into the night. So I'm going to play a couple ads. Thank you very much to everyone that's joined us for this VOD review. It was a long one. I'll thank the people that subscribed. If anyone wants to donate, you guys can do that after the break, and we'll chat a little bit, and then we'll call it a night. So I'll be back in just a few.